Okay, you want it bigger. You want it nice and big. It's as big as I can make it and still see it, okay? Okay, foundation. So the foundation's got $176 million in assets. But what matters is what it spits off. These are the investments in the foundation. What matters is what it spits off every year. And you could see it spits off 18 million, 16 million, 17 million, 15 million to support scholarships, new programs, things of that nature. Uh, and so that supports about 3% of the PSU expenses. You can see it's pretty consistent over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's a good thing. It's not a big deal one way or the other, but just informationally. In terms of the foundation itself, uh, what they get beat by the S&P 500 every year, except for 22, so that's a different story. But most universities get beat by the S&P 500. They invest in ways they shouldn't invest. They should just use plain vanilla funds, but they don't do that. So we talked about the reserves, and so here's the cash. So these are the cash and the investments. They're the reserves. Again, I don't want to give the impression that there's a pot of cash sitting in the president's office that you that they can do whatever they want with. It's not the case. But it does, again, it reflects financial freedom and flexibility. And that's really what I'm here for. The reason why I'm doing this and the reason why you guys are all here is because the university claims they don't have any financial freedom and flexibility except to lay people off. And this graph suggests otherwise significantly, in that they have reserves that are liquid, that they can deal with any upcoming future problems. It's not to say they should use this for ongoing expenses forever, because that's not the case. But I think things have been pretty good generally. We'll get to the cash flows in a second. This is the reserves compared to the debt. This is the viability ratio, which, by the way, they claim is much higher than I claim, which is wonderful. That what the way I did the adjustments was too conservative. In terms of you say you couldn't find mine, the way I did the adjustments led to a number that's much lower than the Portland State Administration actually did it, and I want to see that on the audited statements when the statements come out in 24. I want to see the financial statements and see the adjustments, then I'll be able to judge better. And it just means the green line's a little higher. That's what it means. The green line's a bit like up here than there. But debt is coming down. That's just not because they're not because they're paying off a bunch of debt every big chunks. It's just the principal gets paid off every year. And the way I made this point at the presentation last week. PSU does not borrow money by itself. The state borrows the money. So the Oregon University system may be non-existent, but it works. That's the way public universities in the state borrow money. So I want to talk about cash flows. And again, I'll try to stay with this. Is just you get a sense right up here. You can see tuition fees coming down, but the state going up. And this is going to get even better with the state. The state appropriation is going to keep going up and up. Tuition and fees, that's another story, as we'll see. But so what we get is this is the cash in, the cash out. So they have a cash surplus every year. Now, in the document the university put out yesterday and at the table last week, they talk about operational deficits. Well, the problem with operational deficits is they include non-cash depreciation expense. Depreciation expense is not deferred maintenance. It's just an estimate of a decline in value of the buildings. And it really has no meaning whatsoever in terms of the financial health of the place. And Moody's, Standard & Poor's, they don't use any metric of performance that includes depreciation in it. It's always taken out. So, and this is good. I mean, even, the pandemic, when revenues went down, but so did expenses in that year. And then a lot of this increase was support from HERF, a Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund support. A lot of that support here was because of that. But this is the story. This is why the reserves are growing, because they take in more cash than they spend every year, which is, again, a good thing. And if the university is claiming, this is going to stop, I'm not buying. not from what I see as we'll look at as we look at enrollment and we look at the state appropriation. I'm not buying that this is going to stop. And we could talk about 2024. The audit statements have not been, the year ended 4.5 months ago, almost 5 months ago now. Let's just get those out there so we could assess what everything is. So I can assess what these cash flows are. But we haven't seen them yet. So this is the operating cash flows every year. So it's good. All right. Another metric that's used by the bond rating agencies is called EBITDA, earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. It's trying to get at, it's another cash flowy type of metric. And you get similar results. You can see the green where my cursor is, that line there is pretty close to this. It's pretty close to these. That's what they're trying to get at. And in this graph, I show you the two different metrics, the cash flow margin, which is steadier, but the EBITDA margin. I rely more on the cash flow measure than EBITDA because there's less extraneous stuff in it, but still, and EBITDA is typically higher than cash flows, but still, both metrics tell the same story. The story that matters is that they take in more than they spend, leading to increases in reserves, leading to the increased financial freedom and flexibility that the administration has going forward. So this is the bond rating. There's been no rating since, and Moody's doesn't rate you guys anymore, but total cash investments are strong, provide a good buffer to operations. Yeah. Sharp declines in enrollment, no doubt. That's the biggest challenge. But the state itself and the state of Oregon, this is not Portland State's bond rating. This is the state of Oregon's bond rating. And so it's good. They're in good shape. The bond rating is right here. This is Portland State's bond rating. You can see it's certainly not anywhere close to, oh my God, we have to lay people off territory. It's just not. And this is not me giving. I don't give the bond rating. Moody's gives the bond rating. All right. Let's look at the revenue distribution. I'll go right to the graph. So this is the revenue distribution in 23. The great thing about this revenue distribution, when you have a pie chart that doesn't rely on one source, there's tuition, there's a state appropriation, there's grants and contracts. The university and some of you even believe that only E&G matters and nothing else, because only E&G can be spent on this and that. It's one university. It's one place. Everything matters. Financial aid grants, that's Pell Grant money. That's tuition revenue. Any way you look at it, that's tuition grant. That's tuition revenue. That's what it is. It's tuition revenue paid by the federal government for people of a certain income level. That's what Pell Grants are. So if you're playing politics and you guys are arguing about with state legislatures and nationally what should happen, remember what Pell Grants do. Pell Grants give people a chance to go to college who otherwise would not, and they wind up as revenue to the university. So I'm not telling you what to do, but it is beneficial to the university and to everybody the larger Pell Grants are in terms of eligibility and who can get them and what they are and what's in them. And you can see it's a significant revenue source because you have a significant amount of your student body that is first generation going to college, coming from low and middle income families. So these make a big difference. And the tuition revenue is after any institutional support. Like if you give people a break, if you give institutional scholarships, or if you give people room and board, or if you give people a break on tuition, depending on whatever reasons the university decides in terms of bringing people in. So, but this is a good pie chart because you don't rely on one source. As I said, I've been to a lot of the private universities, even in your state, and the pie chart, the red is 3/4 of the pie. It's all tuition. That's why public universities are so strong financially. They're such strong financial entities because of this pie chart mostly, because they have the different sources. Now, we could argue about how big this should be compared to that, and you can see the grants are solid. Auxiliaries, by the way, housing, dining, student union, bookstore, parking, centers, hotels, all that stuff goes into auxiliaries. Athletics, talk about that. don't worry, we're going to get to that. I know we have an hour. We'll get to it. So the total revenues wind up being pretty steady over the last 10 years, 9 years. So then another metric that's used is the change in net assets. I use accrual. What I mean by that word, the purple, they include things like paper gains and losses on investments. They include depreciation expense. They include a lot of non-cash stuff that's non-operational. And you can see it's very bouncy. High in some. It was high here. There was a big capital appropriation from the state in 2019. I We don't include that in operating cash flows or in EBITDA. We don't include capital appropriations, nor should we. Okay, so this kind of tells you just right here, looking at this graph here, break it up into 15 to 19, 19 to 23, and 15 and a long time period. You could see that, yeah, tuition revenue is down, but the state has more than covered for it. That's the financial story. The state has really rescued Portland State. And I understand the issues. This has to stop. Yeah, it does have to stop. At some point, the black is, the state's not going to keep doing this. The black may not be bigger than this black may not be bigger than that black. This is the increase in state appropriation over the last 9 years versus the decline in tuition. You could see the increase in the state appropriation beats the decline in tuition by quite a bit. And everything else really doesn't matter that much when you look at it. It really doesn't. So, all right, let's look at the big one, which is enrollment. So we're here in fall 24, and the data source I use for enrollment, I can show it to you. I use Office of Research and Planning, OIRP, at PSU, and they do not have an official fall 24 number. When I did this, and even as of this morning, there is not an official fall 24 number for enrollment. What they have put out is that full-time equivalent enrollment is down 4.1% from fall 24 to fall 23. Well, they suggested that. That was, well, I don't know. I want to see it before I make. I want to see the official numbers. The document they put out did not have official numbers on them. We used to have a relationship here at Portland. As I said, I've been coming there a long time. It used to be a pretty solid relationship between the unemployment rate. The higher it was, look at these. Look at your unemployment rate in Oregon. The economy in your state, and I'm looking at the pictures of who you guys are. You guys are all so young. You guys weren't even around in 2009, 2008. You guys are so young. You were probably in high school then or something like that. You guys remember that? You guys were in high school, right? It's not true. You guys were in high school in 2008. But look at those unemployment rates. Compare. I mean, obviously national was high, but do you remember those days? When Portland was, the economy in Oregon was seen very negatively, and your unemployment was one of the worst in the country. I'm not saying anything that's not true. Nevada was also, it was you guys, Nevada, and a couple other states that were always vying for the worst unemployment rate in the country. That is so far from the truth now. Things have really changed in your state, and maybe all of you have lived there seriously this whole time. You have a good sense of that. But what I think it's done as the unemployment is, there's not really a relationship anymore between unemployment and enrollment. I don't think that's true anymore. This just tells you that consistently 80% of your people come from your state. The biggest decline that you will see in enrollment is in this slice here. This slice, the domestic non-Oregon, and the university does try to make it attractive for citizens in Washington State and California to come to school where you are, but that's where the decline has been. There's been a significant decline here. And international enrollment, it's a small part of it. It used to be, as you see, 8% of the student body. Now it's 5.5%. Pandemic had something to do with that. That still hasn't recovered, and other world economic conditions. And I'm sure under the new Trump administration, everything will just be wonderful before you know it. So that was a joke. As my wife has examined every country in the world that we could move to, she has not mentioned the state of Oregon. So there you go. So you guys are safe. We're not coming. She honestly looks at every country we could possibly move to, which, okay. Anyway, so this is You can't shy away from this. I've been analyzing universities for decades now, and this is not good news. There's no way this is good news. And this is why they're panicking. This is why your administration is panicking. It's because of this graph. My view, and I've seen it. I work at a place, Eastern Michigan, a regional public. We're not as large as you. We're not as researchy as you. So we're a level or two down from you guys. I'll admit that. But we've also gone from 25,000 students to 12,000 students over the last 10 to 15 years. We've been cut in half. And it's the same story that I read in your administration. All we ever read. And I've read every press release that you guys put out about all this stuff. All we read about is deficits and cuts, deficits and cuts. When that's all you talk about, that does not help enrollment. I'm not saying you have to be Pollyannish and lie about any. That's not what I'm saying. I think the focus should always be on the revenue side and on retention. And I know how difficult it is. I teach the same students you teach. I teach 4 classes. Not like I'm not teaching. I teach 4 different classes now. I teach what you guys do. I have the same students you guys have. And I know how hard it is to keep them in school, financially and otherwise. But that should be the focus instead of let's just get in a room and talk about what to cut. That just doesn't work. It does not work. It makes this chart worse. So, and they have, yeah, go ahead.
We have a question in the room.
Sort of a comment. We have yet to see on bargaining, we've asked about like to grow enrollment, and we have yet to see any documents about that. So I think it just kind of adds to what you're saying, but also I think about 50% of our students are transfers from community colleges, and community and college enrollment took a really big dip during the pandemic. But there was just an article yesterday talking about how local community college enrollment has rebounded by like 11
or 6 at PCC.
Okay, 6%. Do you anticipate that then we might, even without our VPs coming up with a plan for growing enrollment, could we potentially see a bump in enrollment simply because community college enrollment is finally starting to recover?
Yeah, that's exactly what's being tried here in Michigan. In Michigan, they have made the legislature passed a bill to make community college enrollment free for people below a certain income level, which is basically almost everybody. The feeling here is that that's the key. The feeling here for regional publics like yours and ours, that the key is the community college. You said 50% of your students come from community college. I would venture to guess that if you looked at your students' transcripts, you'd find even a majority of your students took at least a class or 2 or something else at a community college before they came to Portland State. And the simple reason is cost. So I think the community college pipeline at my school, it's closer to 75%, by the way, that come from community college before they come to here. So maybe I'm just biased by experience here. And I sit on the same committees you guys sit sat at negotiations for our university for years. We've heard the same thing. But I think that is the key. I do. I think community colleges, and they rebounded here. We have a double-digit increase here also. We have a 10% increase in community college enrollment from fall 23 to fall 22 to fall 23. So in regional in southeastern Michigan. And I think that's the key there as well in Oregon. And then keeping them. And then once they're there, it's keeping them there. So you can see, I broke this up into subperiods. The 24 is fall 23, by the way. So fiscal 24 is fall 23. I really would like to get my hands on the official fall 24 numbers, both the financial statements and the enrollment numbers. And I know this is the time of year where all this happens. And in the administration's defense, they don't need my defense, but I will defend them. There's a lot going on. And to produce, when you want to produce an official enrollment report and an audited financial statement, because once you put it out there, it's done. It has to be right. So I understand that this is the time of year where they are not sitting there lollygagging and getting this stuff done. I understand that, but I think it's about time. I think December 1st should be, let's get this stuff done. Let's get it out there, especially in negotiation, especially when you're talking about layoffs. We have to get all these facts on the table. But I do understand that there is a lot to do, and making sure that the enrollment numbers are exactly right. It's not as simple as you think. I work with the enrollment people. You can't just, press a button, here it is. It doesn't work that way. It's more complicated than that. And the same with the audited statements. You don't just press a button and it's done. I understand that. So, all right. So in terms of undergrad, these are percentage changes. Now, grad is much smaller, but over the long time period, you can see grad's gone down more than undergrad. But undergrad had this big period of increase here. This was driven by unemployment in your state in large respect. But unemployment's gone away, which not gone away, but it's significantly reduced to where it's been. Now, this is the one I wanted to talk about. Here's the international, and this one here, the yellow 20 to 24 domestic non-Oregon. That's been an issue right there. You guys see what I'm saying? So we're talking basically Washington State, California, Nevada. I mean, obviously there's other states that feed into Portland State, but those as much as anyone. That's again, me as an outsider looking at it, this one right here is a concern to me. But this is over a 4-year period, but that's still that right there. That yellow guy right there is definitely a concern because it's still a source of it's still important that you guys bring in people from other states. So this is by level. I think it's good that you're bringing in people, new people. The freshmen you're bringing in, you brought in 2260 in fall 23, almost the same as before the pandemic. So almost the exact same number. Let's keep them. Let's focus on keeping them. That's to me is the story there.
Oh, but the people that teach them.
Go ahead.
But they want to cut the people that teach them.
Yeah, which it's self-fulfilling. It just all the focus should be on keeping and extending. Okay.
There's another question in the room. Sorry to
Go ahead.
interrupt.
Mr. Bunsis, this perhaps might be a little outside your bailiwick, but it's precisely for that reason I think your answer would be interesting. There's a surplus every year. Why is it that the last thing university administrations think of, or at least this administration, is decreasing the teacher-student ratio so there's smaller classes, more instruction, in order to attract and retain students? Why is it the last thing they think of using their surplus for, other than building giant entertainment complexes, is to improve the teaching, which is, after all, what the university really sells. Now, there could be a lot of reasons, the larger society and ideology. I'm interested in your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think we've gotten away from what goes on in the classroom. I mean, you guys, I don't know how much you guys teach in person. I'm sure a lot of you do, as I did yesterday, all day. That's where it all happens. Think about the conversations you have with your students before class, after class, at your student orgs, at the events. That's where it all happens. The connections we make, and I'm not bragging, we make with our students before class, after class, during office hours, at our student org events. That's what keeps students coming back. That's what keeps them connected. And anything that gets away from that is wrong. And when you try to put 60 or 70 people in a intro accounting class, it doesn't work. You can't get to know them when there's that many people. Class size to me is a huge issue. Why a student chooses and their family chooses Portland State over other universities, what happens in the classroom has to make a difference. It's everything. Our students remember us well after they leave. I mean, I'm older than most of you put together, but I tell you this, they do not forget you 20 years after they graduated. They remember us. But they remember us if we're teaching in a class of 25, that we're not going to remember them as much if they're in a class of 85. I think class size is just a huge issue that, we fought really hard at my union on class size. It's one of the big things we fight about. So what they have done, of course, is just stopped hiring us. That's the way they've dealt with us. They just stopped hiring. They just stopped hiring tenure track faculty, which we'll see is a little bit of what you guys are doing there too. They just stopped hiring us, and the classes have gotten bigger, and it hasn't worked. And enrollment's dropped 50%. So there you go. All right. I don't mean to put one group against another. Obviously, I teach business, but the big drop, obviously, in arts and sciences, again, always self-fulfilling. You can't have a university that doesn't have its heart in arts and sciences. You can't. How do you have a university if these kids don't know how to write a sentence? You can't. It can't happen. Uh, Even in accounting, they have to write full sentences, and they have to be taught how to write. They have to be taught how they need to know how to think, how to ask questions, how to be skeptical. They need to know all these things, and I think cutting here is just short-sighted. It's just very short-sighted. So, okay, let's go. We'll go past enrollment. Uh, I want to. All the this is all the publics in Oregon. So PSU has gone down more than everybody percentage-wise, but Western uh, over most over the this period, the most recent one, and over the 10-year period. This is the Higher Education Coordinating. HECC is the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. So you guys don't have a system, but you kind of have a system. You have a place that collects data for all the publics in your state, which is good because it's good official data, and that's what we use to. So, and this is troubling, for sure. Tuition, it's not cheap to go to school. I mean, this is just a lot of money. I don't care who you are, that's a lot of money. And these fees, we're going to talk about athletics, and we have discounts for Washington and Western states. I understand that. So yeah, you're trying to attract out-of-state students at some level of comparison, but this keeps going up. And it's a big challenge. As I think you know, these are the annual percentage increases. This is 24 to 25. Tuition and fees up 4.7% for undergrads at Portland State, in-state. Discount rate in the teens, even lower. Now, you got to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt to say, oh, it's too low. Remember, you have a lot of Pell Grant students. So the percentage of students that are on Pell Grants at Portland State is probably larger than most of your peers. You probably have a much larger percentage of low-income students than than certainly UO and also Corvallis. There's no doubt that you have the larger percentage of Pell Grant students than the two other largest schools in the state, in Eugene and Corvallis. There's no doubt that's true. So my point is the discount rate, though seemingly low, needs to be considered in the context of you have more Pell Grant students that really the discount rate is not related to, because those students are coming in with support from the federal government and they're not part of this allowance. This is your institutional allowance. So, all right. Now let's talk about the state appropriation. And so this is what we got. This is from April 24, and this is where the state appropriation is going. And this is nice. It's really helped deal with the decline in enrollment because of state appropriation being bigger. There is a case to be made that it should even be higher. And the case has two prongs to it. The first prong is looking at the appropriation versus inflation, which this graph does here. The nominal, which is a nice looking upward sloping graph. But when you look at the purple line and inflation adjusted, you see the amount of 89 million in 2024 is barely bigger than it was in 19. Nominally, it's gone from 97 million to 122 million. And by the way, for the people who think E&G is all that matters, this is not just the appropriation to E&G, this is the appropriation to the entire university, which has several prongs to it. And this is from the audit statements and iPads. This is the official numbers and what they get, and from the state itself. This comes from HECC as well. But you could see, if just look at 88 to 89, it's basically been flat in those 5-year period. In the same time that it's increased, but inflation has eaten into a lot of it. So that's certainly something we all wish would be higher. When you look at the two main revenue sources, you see it's not bad. So is this going to start flipping? Now, in California, in the California State University system, not the UC system, the California State University system, the appropriation is bigger than tuition revenue. That's why it's hard to attract people from California. Do you know the tuition at the Cal State system is lower than yours? That's a fact. So, I mean, obviously everyone wants to live in Portland. I mean, it goes without saying, who doesn't want to live in Portland? I mean, I love the river. I mean, you got the river, you got that river right there. And it's like when you go to Portland, isn't the river like everywhere? Like every other block, the river seems to be. The river guy winds around. It's everywhere. It's great. You don't have that in Bakersfield. I've been there. So you guys do have, it's nice. And the physical campus is nice. And the city itself is easy to get around. There's public transportation. There's a lot of good things to offer there. But I don't, obviously this is not a favorable trend going down like this. But in California, in New Mexico, in Hawaii, in Alaska, in what other states? Connecticut, even the state appropriation is bigger than tuition. So it does happen that that's the case. Now in Vermont and New Hampshire, they're almost like private schools. The state's like 10% of the tuition of the revenues base in the public universities there. So it's very different by state as to what that is. So this is the bond rating. So this is the bond rating of the state, which is doing well. Now, I wanted to show you this graph here. Dave sent me. I'm going to just switch off. Just bear with me. I promise I won't be long. So he sent me this document last night. So I had used the last revenue forecasting conference of the state. I got to make this bigger. You guys can't see it. That's better, right? You see that? Okay. So first, this is me. This is my little annotation. 80% of the general fund for the state of Oregon comes from personal income taxes. You have all these other taxes, marijuana, et cetera, et cetera. They don't amount to very much. And the corporate tax, which you guys voted to not increase. Remember, you guys had it on the ballot. I think it was 119. I think it was Proposition 119, which didn't, the 3% to be used, and it didn't pass. I don't think it was close, was it? Was it? I don't think it was close. I think the voters in this country are in an angry kind of mood these days. So I don't think that this is not the best time to bring that up in retrospect. But you can see how little you guys, Oregon does tax corporations much less than most states. That is a fact. We could, maybe you believe it. And as this, what you're missing, of course, is the sales tax that Washington State has, but they don't have a income tax. So a lot of weird stuff going on with taxes. I think if we all had to start over again, it would all be different. But you could see the forecast. This is down from 21-23, but then look how it's forecasted to go up. And then as we go forward in the next graph, next table I want to show you. I think I want to show you. I went the wrong way, sorry. Next, where's my table I wanted to show you? This guy here, the close of session here. So what this was saying, COS stands for close of session. So this was a September forecast. Now it's supposed to be bigger. This happened right here in the last 2 months. There's an $800 million increase in personal income tax revenue that the state of Oregon is bringing. This is, you don't see this. I just wanted to highlight this, if you don't mind. See, I guess that's in the books. That's what they did 2 months ago. And that's what I based my thing on. And then this happens. This is great news. The point is, this is definitely great news. And sorry, where am I? Let me get to where it was. So the state itself, the future of the state financially is looking very good from where it was before. Right there. So this is you see the September forecast is now, that's what I was showing you, that this is better, which is good. And doesn't mean the appropriation is going to be necessarily higher, but the state certainly, and they had that kicker. You guys know that kick, you get money back if you guys will get that nice check if things go above a certain level. Stupid idea, if I could say so. Am I allowed to say that? It's a dumb idea. It's a dumb. I don't, you guys may not agree with that, but here's where I have to admit this is not good. As great as the increase has been in that graph in the appropriation, for 2024, we don't have 25 yet, obviously. The state of Oregon, this is not PSU, this is the entire higher public education. That's not great. That's just not where it needs to be. So I'll just leave it at that. And here's your unemployment rate. You guys used to be the red, you guys used to be much worse. So you were, here's when, back here in 82, and then when I was coming here, this is when I was first coming to Oregon, it was right here. Remember these days? No one remembers 1982. You guys were way too young to remember that. No one remembers that. But this, I remember, and it was rough. It was rough then. But you could see how the red and the blue are about the same. So, all right.
Question in the chat. We had a question in the chat. Would you like me to read it for you?
I got it.
Okay.
From
Katie.
From Katie, adjunct faculty. We heard administration and patient expenses exceeded revenues. Is that right? When you look at the expenses, when you consider depreciation, yes. We also heard you're looking at reported past done numbers, and the budgets are used to require these cuts as prospective administrators saying, yeah, Katie, what you're saying, and that's what I started the presentation with. And let's get to the expense chart. Where's my expense? My expense pie chart, sorry. Here. So first, looking at the numbers, when you include non-cash expenses, yes, expenses are bigger than revenues. When you look at the measures that Moody's and Standard & Poor's use, like earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization, and when you look at operating cash flows, they're definitely generating positive cash flows. And yes, I am looking at the past. Well, I'll tell you this. The year 24 ended 4.5 months ago. How about showing us the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 24? How about showing us that? That won't be so past anymore. That will be another year. Plus, here's the problem with budgets. First of all, as I say all the time, the word budgets starts with B and ends with S. That should tell you all you need to know about budgets. They have to do budgets. I get they have to do them. But remember, they include what they want to include. They exclude what they want to exclude. They create budgets that include capital items in there, like state appropriations and the capital appropriation and debt proceeds. Those things do not belong in operation. They do not assess operations. They're not operational. That's not what a budget is. An operating budget should be an operating budget. Secondly, they get incredibly pessimistic in doing budgeting. And so, well, since you asked, I'll go right to the question. At the very end of the presentation, in the appendix, that's what I think of budgets. I put it in the appendix. So I'll tell you what I think of it. So firstly, this is what they have they projected a deficit for 23. This is what actually happened. The actual total revenues minus the actual total expenses were actually positive in 23. Net operating cash flows and EBITDA, the other measure of cash flows, are positive. This is what they're projecting. First of all, they know these numbers for 24, and I predict they're all positive again. But we'll see that when they show us the audited statements. We'll see that. So that's the first thing with budgets. The second thing is this note I have here. And just look at the note I underlined at the bottom right. In their budget, the administration is predicting 6.4% and 4.1% increases in salaries and fringes. However, the average percentage change for the last 8 years on a cash basis is 2.6%. The average is 3.5% if you take out the COVID year. Conclusion, the administration is overly pessimistic in budgets. That is what budgets, that's why they need to be taken with the hugest grain of salt you could possibly find. They get incredibly pessimistic about predicting revenues and predicting expenses, and they include and exclude whatever they want. I'm not saying they don't have to do them, but take them with a large grain of salt is my point with budgets. So I don't believe their story that the world is coming to an end. And yes, if I had the 24 cash flows being positive, that would be even better evidence that that's the case, that I shouldn't believe their budgets. So let's look at the expense chart. Yeah.
Sorry, we have another question in the room.
Go ahead.
Well, this question is I think for other bargaining folks, is it likely that we'll get our COLAs in January, given our contract status when we are bargaining,
No,
so that what they had budgeted for an increase won't actually.
exactly.
Just wanted to say that part out loud.
Did you all online hear that?
I did not hear that.
The question was, since we're currently in bargaining and our contract expires in 4 business days, are we likely to get a COLA in January? And the answer is no, because we won't be done bargaining. Now, whether the administration would like to finish a fair contract and do it now, it may also include retroactive COLAs, but that's a long fight, given that the university has told us they have no interest in discussing economics at this time.
Okay.
So therefore, the percentages mean there's more sitting on more money.
Well, thanks for that good news. I'll continue.
There's another question in the room.
Okay.
This is kind of spinning back to the tuition or headcount thing. You may have said this, I may not have caught it, just help me out. So if the community colleges, this is how I understand it, the community colleges have been seeing an increase, I don't know how big, but seeing an increase or rebound, right? And if what you had said, or somebody had said 50% of the people that pull up to PSU is from one of them, then also my understanding is that they, folks be doing 2 years at one spot, then they come to the other thing to do the final 2. So then wouldn't that just mean that the head count is just a 50% slower rebound rate?
Right.
Yes. Okay, I just wanted that out loud, so I know what to say, because he said it a while ago, and I was like, so then what's the panic? Like, I was like, it's not like, it's just gonna take you double time to get back.
Yeah.
Creative.
Patience would be nice.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
this is the expense distribution, and this is on instruction. The category I focus a lot on is institutional support. There are no AAUP members in institutional support, no matter what you guys may believe. I understand there's a lot of you have a lot of people that don't teach, counselors, advisors, researchers. There's a lot of people that do a lot of those things, a lot of different things besides teach that are in the bargaining unit. They are not in the category. They should not be in the category called institutional support. The way that category is written by IPEDS, they should not be in that category. That's the way so they are dispersed throughout a lot of these different categories, obviously centered here. And in instruction, deans, associate deans do not go in here. Provost, none of that goes in instruction. None of that, even though they may oversee instruction, they don't go in. The cost of those people do not go in instruction. This is people teaching class, no matter what level, no matter who they are. In union and not union, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. They go in there. Okay. In terms of salaries, if I just take out all the allocated costs, about half of the salaries go to instruction. You could see an eighth of the salaries go to basically administration. That's really what it is. Academic support, librarians are in there. Academic advisors, academic counselors are in academic support. And basically everyone else is under the provost, goes in academic support. And a lot of your AAUP members are in there. A lot of your AAUP members are in student services. You have a lot of members in there. A lot of your AAUP members are in research. You also have AAUP members in auxiliaries. Public service is mostly research, is mostly the PR arm of the university, public relations and things of that nature. You don't have that many AAUP members likely in there, but definitely in all of these categories, academic support, auxiliaries, research, student service, there are AAUP members filtered throughout these categories. There's no doubt about that, but they're not in there. That's not where they are. That's all the other side. So looking at this over time, so breaking it up, using IPEDS, which is federal Department of Education, we still do have a Department of Education as of now. That may change, but we have one as of today. So you do remember who the first one was under Trump was Betsy DeVos from Michigan. I don't know if you remember. You guys too young to remember her. Oh my God, not perfect. I'll just say that, not perfect. So this is institutional support. So from 29 to 23, The salary component, their salaries went up 37.8%. And you can see academic support, public service, instruction. And over the 8-year period, we do it in 16 because that's when things change. IPEDS changed the reporting structure in 16. Not that I couldn't go back. Of course, I can go back, but you can't compare 15 going forward in IPEDS. But you can see these categories doing, and academic support also has the deans. So in academic support are not only AUP members, librarians, counsels, etc. You also have deans and associate deans in there. So I'm not going to say anything about whether that should or should not be. That's just the way it is. I'm just so. And there's instruction. So number of faculty over time. There's some definite issues with the data in the way this was reported. I don't think we saw this big decline here. I don't know why that happened. That's a huge decline. So it seems a big increase in professors and a big decline in instructors. Again, I'm not, when I see these kind of things, they submit all these numbers, admin does, I'm not convinced that this is actually happening. It's hard to make inferences when you're not confident that that's happening. Management, the number of management employees went from 94 to 139. I don't think they hired 45 new management. I just think they reclassified. So it's really just hard to, but still, when you look at this over time, this is management. So it's basically flat for the last 6 years. Faculty are not flat. So not good. All right, tenure track faculty taking a big hit. You guys could tell me this. When someone retires or leaves from your department, they're not always
Nope.
replaced, are they?
Nope.
Not with another.
I would imagine the numbers say no. The numbers say there's some replacement, but not there's not a freeze, but it's selective. Is that a fair way to put it? That's what the data says to me. And the number of graduate teaching assistants has gone down. The number of graduate research assistants has gone down. You guys may or may not know this or feel that. I don't know if you do or not. They reclass no position. Okay, so that's Sonia. I'm reading what Sonia's writing in the chat about this. Okay, I see that. So anyway, part-time faculty basically steady. You guys live in a big city that a lot of people want to live in, and so it's not that difficult. And a lot of people work at Portland State to just teach one class, but there are some people who are part-time faculty members who do it that's their whole life, and there's part-time faculty members who just teach one class. They're both included in the purple line. But still, this trend line is not favorable. And the comment that was made earlier about class size, a gentleman made a comment about class size and meeting students, stuff like that. Well, this is not favorable. This is not favorable. I took this from the Provost survey in Inside Higher Ed. Tenure is very or extremely important, 50%. Tenure is extremely viable at their institutions. So we don't like it for some other places. For our place, 62%. They personally favor a system of long-term contracts, even for tenure faculty. I know the provost may be here, and you may have answered this differently. It doesn't matter. This is how the provost in general answered them. So, yeah. Okay. Management employees up, everybody else down. Faculty down the most, tenure track faculty down the most. Not great. And that's the same stuff. The average management person makes $149,000. The average for all ranks faculty makes 102. So, all right, let's look at faculty salaries over time. I know AUP members are a lot more than faculty, but this is what we have published in the AUP survey. And IPEDS, just let me get the graph. So from 17 to 20, all the ranks were beating inflation. From 20 to 24, all the ranks lost to inflation. That's what the graph says. Oh, sorry. So I'm looking at the clock. I'm aware of the clock. So that tells us, and this is over the, so this is the 3-year sub period. This is three, and this is the pandemic. So up this period, everybody did better than inflation, which is nice, of course. That's this pink is that 12.1%. So the all ranks, this yellow orangey thing is 20%. That green is 13. That red is 16, and that blue is 16.4. Here, the black is inflation over the 7-year period. That's the 31. This yellow is the instructor salary. And those ranks tend to have a lot of change in them in terms of classification and who's in them, etc. But still, this is the story that you guys are dealing with at the table, is that you're a bunch of people that have lost ground to inflation over the last 4 years. That's what this graph tells right here. So, all right, peers. Dave and I and others went through a lot of back and forth on peers. So we took it very seriously. I think Dave could agree that we did. And we came up with what we thought was the right group. We didn't cherry pick. We didn't look at results first. We looked at what we thought was right. So I did this qualitative analysis of everybody. The Bureau of Economic Region, the state, the highest degree offered, the highest level of offering, degree of urbanization, the Carnegie Research Classification. You guys are more researchy than a lot of these places. The blues, I'm not so sure belong. And I love the Cal State system. I've been to California more than I've been to Oregon, if you can believe that. I've been to 16 of the 23 California state campuses in my time. So I've been there. They are similar to yours, but you guys are more researchy. I'm not just saying that to be nice. There's no doubt that there's more research done at Portland State than the Cal States. That is a fact. So whatever and that affects salaries. So this is that qualitative analysis. You guys are in a large, you're classified as being in a large city. And you're not okay. Us New Yorkers consider anything that's not this as the middle of nowhere. That's not the way us New Yorkers view the world. I'm allowed to say that out loud. But I will not consider myself a true New Yorker until the New York Mets sign Juan Soto, but that's a different story. We'll talk about that at a different time. So you could see, in terms of the highest degree in the Met, you could see it in the numbers. You guys are above a lot of these places just in terms of that. So it really makes the faculty salary comparison grain of saltish. This tells me this. I'm not going to shy away from it. Still going to do it. But with the fact that you guys are more researchy than a lot of the schools in your peer list. And so the research spending, you guys are fourth. The percentage of research as a percentage of total expenses, research dollars, you're second. As a percent of total expenses, you're fourth. So you are more researchy than, I know research is not really a word, but and you just do more research than most of your peers. You can see the Cal States, all the Bakersfield, Chico, Long Beach, San Bernardino, beautiful down there, by the way. I've been there. So, and Long Beach, right on the pier there, right? The Long Beach State University is right by where they dock all the ships there. So it's nice. You're more graduate based than undergrad based, and that goes along with the research than your peers. You have a high percentage of grad students. You're fourth highest in the percentage of grad students, 18th highest in the percentage of undergrad students. So you're more graduate student. It just fits with the research. And so here's what it leads to. Your full professors have the fourth highest salary. Now, you have a bunch that didn't submit data to the AAUP compensation survey, 24. You're middle of the pack in associate and assistant. Instructors, I would take that with a grain of salt, and all ranks. You don't want to look at the all ranks data because, as I show you here, why does PSU do better than all ranks in any of the three rankings? Because you have a larger percentage of professors, associates, and assistants, and a lower percentage of the instructor, lecturer, no rank. You're the lowest percentage in your base. You have the lowest percentage of this category and the highest percentage of this second highest of this category. So it's going to skew your faculty base is skewed towards the higher paid people. So when you do all ranks, you guys are going to be higher. So this is iPads. So you're towards the top, but I think a lot of the reason is the research thing. So that's my view on faculty salaries. The instructional workforce, you're last in the percentage of tenured faculty and tenured track faculty among your peers. But you're seventh highest in grad teaching and ninth highest in part-time teaching. I think this is because they're not replacing you guys when you leave. It's not like they're not laying people off. I don't think that's happened, but it's easy. That's why they don't need to lay people off. They just do what they're doing, just not replace you. You know, which I think is short-sighted also. But it's not as drastic as layoffs, which are clearly not needed. Tuition, you guys have the sixth highest tuition, third highest out-of-state tuition. You have a lot. Again, I take this discount rate low. You know, the Pell Grant rate, the Cal States have more Pell Grant students than you guys do. But this is much higher than the Oregon schools. Notice, by the way, there's not a single Oregon school in the peer list. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't be, but I still, Oregon is a very unique state. I think not having anybody from your state. I understand that UO and OSU are not real peers. Tech is very different, and Klamath Falls is the definition of the middle of nowhere, I believe. I think that's when you look in the middle of nowhere, see Klamath Falls. I'm being mean, but true. I still love it. Don't tell them. Don't tell my people there. Don't tell Terry. I love it. I promise. So there you go. These are different expenditures. You spent the 16th most of your peers on instruction, the third highest on research. Slightly higher.
Howard?
Yeah.
So we're at 11:05 and we
Yeah,
need
I'm almost
to.
done. Let me do athletics. Let me just do. Then I'm done. So, because the reason I want to do athletics is you guys told me you can't. I love sports, as you know. Here's the problem with sports. The graph will show it. This is the graph. You see that little green guy? You see those little green dots? Those are your ticket sales.
No.
You see the big blue? That's the athletic expenses. Yes, there's some money from contributions, there's some money from TV, and there's some other money, but I'm sorry, it doesn't work. I felt that when the name, image, and likeness dam broke, that schools like Portland State that play Division I sports, this was their chance, and Eastern Michigan, the Mid-American Conference, our chance to break off from them. You are in the same division as Nike University, also known as the University of Oregon. And you should not be in their sandbox. I understand you don't compete with them. You play them in basketball every once in a while, but obviously not football. But it does drive your expenses higher because you're in the same division. You're in Division I. And we, Portland State, Eastern Michigan, should not be playing in the same division as them. And yes, you can reach me that way, Rob. This is the way it just doesn't work. I love sports. I believe in what college sports brings. It brings opportunity, it brings people together, all that kind of stuff. But look at the green. No one's going to your games. I'm sure they're good games, but no one's paying. Look at that thing. If you want to put a number on it, by the way, we can put a number on it. Where's my graph here? $207,000. That's like 5 people went to a game. I mean, that's really happening. And this is a pandemic, like no one played, but still, it's always been. You cannot blame the pandemic. Look what it was before the pandemic. It got above 3. It got one time. It got above 300,000 in 2019. And the student fees, the students are paying for athletics whether they go or like it or not. A portion of their student fees goes to athletics. The school funds, now you could take out, the administration has argued at Portland State with me over the years, not this one, but a prior one, has argued with me that the scholarships are not real athletic expenditures. And we admit, Portland State administration, not the current administration, the one where I was at the table a couple of times back, we do not consider those. So what I did for this round, not knowing who was on the other side, doesn't matter. I took out, the last line is the deficit, and this is a real deficit. This isn't some budget deficit. This is cash in, cash out. This last row, $9 million, $7 million, $5 million, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's getting worse. $9 million in 23 in cash in, cash out in athletics. That's the problem. That's probably larger than the gap between the two sides at the table right now. That's my guess. So I'll stop there. And I know you guys got to go and stuff like that, but I'll stop there. So I got through most of what I wanted to go through. Let me get my little green dot. You guys see that? You guys could, I know it's big. Can you guys see that dot on the screen there? It's not too big.
Barely.
Yeah, well, but you can see the blue. You can see the expenses.
Yeah. We have maybe 4 minutes for questions. Yeah, go
I'd
ahead.
just like to comment, if scholarships are not real expenses, the departments shouldn't have to budget for graduate, tuition.
Okay. I knew someone was going to be someone was going to call me out on that. I plead guilty. You're right.
I wasn't criticizing you.
No, you're right. The reason I did it is because of what happened 6-7 years ago, whenever it was. I'm not. I don't think administrators are bad human beings. When they say we don't view it that way, I tried to. That's why I took it out, because they said we don't view those in athletics as real cost, because they say, well, that money would still, those scholarships, those kids would come here some other way and it doesn't really count. I agree with you. I think they are real costs, because if you don't give it to the athletic kids, these are other students that could use that opportunity to go to school and reduce the cost of it to them and their families. I think they are real cost, but I was trying to be not nice, but trying to listen to what the other side said to me a couple of times back. That's the reason I put that in there. The reason I said it here. I doubt anyone from the other side who said that then is around now, but okay. I remember. So that's why.
There's another one in the room.
I just want to say that we've learned that the deficit represented by that gray blue line is made up out of the surplus by the Board of Trustees every year. So they have money for this. But as I said earlier, the last thing they ever think of is improving what the university actually sells, which is teaching, by lowering class size, by increasing the teacher-student ratio. On my way here, I ran into a former student who's a computer science major. He told me 3/4 of the courses in his department are not being offered. So they're choking teaching. And this is the most.
Let me say this: what the administration also will say about athletics, they claim it is the front porch or the window to the university, and that the deficit. You rightly claim that what you just said that the board will pick up this deficit easily, without question, every year, which I'm sure they do. They will claim that it increases other revenues, contributions, and enrollment. That because we play sports at Portland State, that puts us in the news. It makes us more viable as a division. If we play Division I. I don't buy it at a place like Portland State. I just don't.
Yeah.
Your students don't go to school there because because you play basketball.
But a couple of administrations ago, they got $2 million for a Hall of Fame for the athletes.
Oregon State.
Howard, thank you so much.
Yeah. You guys know how to find me. Hey, seriously, Dave, I'm sure we'll speak. But when the 24 enrollment numbers and audit statements come out, and you guys are still bargaining, there's no clock running. I really would like to help. So I'd like to.
Thank you.
When you guys get those data, you know how to find me, and we'll turn them around.